Okay, so I'd like to welcome Michael Bedell from Bedell Property Management, also known as the Debt-Free Landscaper on Instagram as well. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, another fun day here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate you giving up some of your time to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. So tell us a bit about yourself and your business.
Well, I started out just as the neighborhood lawn kid growing up, and I kind of fell in love with it. Did music for a while, for a few years after high school. Toured a little bit with a band,
Nice.
and yeah, it was fun, but it also gave me the experience of somebody else can cut you loose no matter how good or bad
Mhm.
you do with that. So. I really enjoyed the lawn landscape end of things, but I had a lot of people asking me questions I didn't have the answer to, and it led me to get some formal education. I'm lucky enough I had a local community college here that offered a ornamental horticulture program and landscape design program. So I took advantage of both, and that was a big stepping stone for my company. Um, and we've just been rocking and rolling ever since, and we're headed into year 15 here. So
Awesome. Very, very cool.
yeah.
I would concur there, and I can relate with the sort of taking a class. And I would recommend anybody getting into the lawn care industry to do some sort of class. I
Absolutely.
did the what they called here a residential landscape technician course, and
Great.
basically it was designed around people that want to become lawn care companies and stuff. And they give you, a bit of business information, but as well as some plant identification stuff and things. And it really helps your confidence when you're quoting a job. And you
Agreed.
can, there's times where I have no idea what a plant is that I'm looking at, but for the most cases, you get to pick up those ones that you're doing on, that you see regularly, and it really helps your confidence when you're talking to a customer and they ask you a question and you're, putting out some Latin names and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, it was awesome. I not only was able to network with some of my peers and still foster some of those relationships to this day, but it actually gave me an opportunity to work with some of my professors, and
Oh, wow.
that on its own opened up a whole bunch of opportunities. And those are people that I once again still stay in touch with. And I
Very
was
cool.
real fortunate. One of my professors went on to be president of the International Society of Arboriculture. So
Oh, cool.
I had some pretty prestigious people.
You got some good connections.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of ironic because we kind of gave each other a little bit of a hard time. And like when she became president, I was like, oh, maybe I should have been a little bit nice. But I ended up going to her retirement party, and she was real glad to see me. So I think we're on good terms.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So I'm assuming here, but I'll ask the question anyways. Is your lawn care business your main hustle or a side hustle?
Oh, beyond my main hustle. It's basically a lifestyle for me, especially in these winter months. This morning, I was up at 2:30 this morning. Had to get through all our sites, get things de-iced before people are up and going for the day. So especially this time of year, it becomes a lifestyle. You just got to revolve sleep patterns and
Yeah.
eating and trying to see family and friends, if that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And for the winter months, in order to be successful, I found that you have to make a lifestyle, but that really continues into the spring and summer months. There's no set work date time for me or my company.
Okay.
And some people would think that's kind of crazy, but I'm a individual with whatever I'm doing, kind of like 110% or nothing.
Yeah.
So it just tends to be 110%.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I woke up this morning and checking the Instagram, and I saw Brian's Lawn Maintenance captioning some photos and tagging you in them. And I thought, oh man, like he's been out working all night.
Yep.
And I said, hopefully he can still do the podcast this morning and do that. I didn't even think about the fact that you'd be out doing what you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know we wanted to try and get to this over the past couple of weeks, and you probably
Yeah.
caught me on a better day. Even though I had to get up early, I was able to kind of have uninterrupted sleep the couple prior nights before. We actually had temperatures above freezing, which in the
Oh,
winter
okay.
months is like the reprieve. Because
Yeah,
we have
yeah, yeah.
days that'll get above freezing, but then it gets below freezing at night, and there's runoff, and
Yeah, yeah.
some of our
That's
sites definitely require some of that extra maintenance, but the prior weeks you may not have gotten such a good interview out of me. I would
there
probably
you
be pretty bleary-eyed, and I would have probably more than once said, "What was the question again?"
Yeah,
So,
yeah. There you go. So you mentioned there in your introduction that you were the neighborhood lawn kid. That's
yep.
how you got your start. But what first attracted you to the lawn care industry and made you even, want to start your own business?
Well, that's a twofold question.
Okay.
The first part is what attracted me to it. Well, I was like 13 or 14, and my dad, who's a very ambitious individual himself,
Hmm.
basically was like, "Hey, you're getting a summer job," and in his eyes, I was like going to working at the local grocery store. And he had no idea, in all his ambition, that there are labor laws in the state of Michigan, and you
Mm.
can't really, if you're it's like a family business, you can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
involved at whatever, but you needed a work permit from school, and you also had to be 14 and a half to like legally work for a business. And I was like 13,
Yeah, yeah.
and my dad was bemoaning this to one of our neighbors, and he goes, "Well, I needed to get a lawn company anyway. How about Mike comes and cuts my lawn?" And that was like the introduction to it
Oh, wow.
all. And I found out I really liked it. You can set your own hours. The work just
Hmm.
has to get done. I'm outside, and then that was furthered uh, uh, when I turned 16. I was able to, even before I turned 16, I was able to go get a job. My friends hooked me up with a dishwashing job at a
Okay.
local restaurant that like I feel like half my high school worked at, just like
Okay.
on
Yeah,
and
yeah.
off.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like the job. And I quickly realized I was kind of like sold as like, "Hey, Mike will do anything.
Mm,
He's ambitious." And I got all the terrible pet projects, from sweeping the parking lot to getting the broken glass under the pop machine, and
mm.
yeah, you name it. And it made me really realize that like I'm doing all this garbage for
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it was like 650 or something like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
back
yeah.
at the time, versus I could go cut a lawn and it's 20 bucks and it's less
Yeah,
than an
yeah.
hour, and no one's telling me I have to do anything.
Yeah.
And I had a couple other jobs beyond that, and those really solidified uh, that I'd want to maybe go work for myself. So the first part
Mhm.
was kind of my dad giving me the kick in the rear to get out there, go do something. When at 13, none of my other friends had jobs, so I kind of thought it was like sort of mean and like the worst thing ever,
Yeah, yeah.
because you're viewing it through the eyes of a kid. But later on, I realized like, hey, he was really on to something here,
Yeah, yeah.
with this whole like you might want to work for yourself
Mhm.
idea. So that was where I took it and kind of ran with it, and it just went on and on from there. When I realized kind of the sky was the limit, once you get your own driver's license, and I had a pickup truck, the world's bigger than just the neighborhood and where you can push the mower to. So
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's an awesome story. Very, very cool.
yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Dad.
there you go. Hey, that's awesome. So, do you have any employees in your business, or are you just a one-man operation?
Yeah, no, we have employees. We definitely the smallest we get in the summer is in the winter, where I've like maybe someone on part time, but a majority of the work we either self perform or do with some subcontractors. But in the summer, the past couple years, it's been a couple staff members. Go back years prior to that. At one point, we had 13 people on staff,
Wow.
and we can get more into it, but as this goes on, but. It had to do with just kind of labor availability and the direction that I wanted to take the business in. And we found out less employees, and maybe throwing less like labor at things versus throwing like skilled people with nice equipment at things
Hmm.
was the difference. So we have a couple people during the summer, and then get a little leaner in the winter here.
Okay. So I'm just going to go off my list of questions here.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming though, when you started, obviously you were a one man
Oh
operation.
yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
at what point did you decide that, hey, I want to get employees?
So it was about the time I was wrapping up high school. I was starting to get involved with some different musical endeavors. I started taking up more time. I still had like a part-time job at the local ice arena.
Yeah.
I taught some guitar lessons,
Cool.
and it was actually kind of a byproduct of just trying to like get everything done. And
Oh,
so the
okay.
first initial employees were like my younger brother, and guys I played music with. And it was
Hmm.
like, hey, you want to give me a hand spreading this mulch? Or,
Hmm.
you want to weed whip and blow off these 5 lawns I got to do before I got class later? And
Yeah.
then it turned into, as the business like formally legitimized, it turned into putting all these people on payroll as W-2 employees. The increase in employees just kind of came from I kind of started delegating responsibilities to my brother. He brought along some of his pals, and they went on payroll too. And at that time, labor was a little easier to come by. So, and I was busy with different things, so I could actually get some guys to do some stuff while I was like taking a class on landscape design or plant ID, like you were mentioning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool.
soils, all that fun stuff.
Very cool. So this next question is one of my absolute favorites.
Okay.
And it's one that I love it because when I ask an entrepreneur person or an entrepreneur mindseted person, they always give me a different answer to this. But if I ask a 9 to 5 job type person, the answer
Mm-hmm.
is always the same.
Okay.
So the question is, how would you define success?
To me, success is love.
Okay.
And if you look at people who are successful in society, a lot of people love them. Probably it's performance based, whether it's loving an actor, loving a sports professional, loving an author. Something they've done has changed the way you feel about something, or struck a chord with you. And
Resonated.
yeah, it resonates with you, and you feel love. But the other side of that is that person likely got there by giving a lot of love, by giving a lot of themselves to something. So
Hmm.
for me, as I found, as I get older, and I kind of want to redefine for me what success is. If you ask a younger guy, I might say like a bunch of money, or the fame or something like that. But for me, it's being able to give love and get love. And just being able to spend time with family, give to organizations I believe in, both monetarily and with my time, give back to my community. And that's obviously what I'm trying to do with the Debt Free Landscaper.
Yeah.
So to me, people who are successful are people who can love passionately and give passionately, and just enjoy the beautiful experience that humans can have, and that's love. So
Awesome. What a great answer. I've never had anyone put it that way. So that's
yeah, right on.
fantastic. And like I said, that's why I love that question to
Yeah.
somebody in your position. And like I said, when I ask somebody who's a 9 to 5 and they're not entrepreneurial minded, it's always, money is success. Having money seems to be the
Sure.
definition of success. But
Absolutely. I think you hit on it. When you're an entrepreneur, you hit a certain point where you realize, like, I don't want to say the work is kind of always there, but the work is always there. There's always things you can do. You're never waiting on a boss to like tell you what to do. And so you realize money only goes so far. And I know
yeah,
you've talked about on the podcast, you're a big believer in we only have so much time, and it's what you do with that time.
yeah.
And so I think it's kind of an offshoot of that.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So, in this next question, pretty straightforward question, is what type of equipment do you use? Now, I asked this question just so that we can get a sense of the types of lawns that you're servicing. So, for
Sure.
me, in my business, 90 of my lawns are done with a 21-inch mower,
Sure.
and a hand blower, and my string trimmer, and that's final 10% is done with a 36-inch mower. So that sort of gives you the idea of the types of lawns and the ratio that I'm doing. So what is it that you guys use in your business?
Man, I'm jealous of your setup. That's
Like,
there's probably not a lot of things to repair and break and
no,
maintain there. I've
no, it's very
discovered
simple. Yeah,
more equipment, more problems, right? The more things
yeah,
that break and you got to maintain. But we mainly have merged into doing high-end work, and that's really
okay,
what we specialized in the past 5 years. We did some going back before then, but that's really what we specialize in. So they're high-end estates, some of them are higher-end commercial properties,
yeah,
condominium complexes, clients where it's more about the quality of service and what's going on than it is, say, a dollars and cents price thing.
okay, yeah,
So for us, we've got a whole fun fleet. We've got a 72-inch Exmark,
wow,
60-inch. We've got a 36-inch. I think we've got like the 26-inch push mower that
yeah,
Exmark has. And it's just going to depend on what sites we're going to. Is going to depend what's going to go in our SureTrack trailer.
okay,
And so that's the lawn care end of things. We've obviously got all the weed whips and blowers and hedge trimmers and steel combi unit.
yeah,
And then we've even got a John Deere tractor we take out for some landscape maintenance and installation projects. So we're fortunate enough to kind of have enough of an arsenal here that it just depends what the scope of work is for each day. But for our clients, so the ball gets thrown in our court probably more often than I'd like. And when you prove yourself as a solutions-oriented person, our
yeah.
type of clientele, they've got the money if you've got the solution. So.
Okay, very cool. So that leads me into my next question, and that's do you offer any services that are not lawn care, or say landscaping related, like maybe power washing or window cleaning or rubbish removal or things like that, or is it all landscape based?
It's generally all landscape based. Obviously, we're in
Okay.
snow and ice management. We touched
Yeah.
on that earlier. We do some consulting work. It's varied what that is over the years. We've done some work for a big mall developer on a couple different projects, doing some consulting. I did a little bit of consulting work for a research firm just the other month. A couple paid sessions to pick my brain on a couple things. So
Cool.
yeah, that's mainly it. The rest really is like, fertilization, landscape design, and all those are really landscape oriented. So I think that's
Okay.
as far as we get off the beaten path.
Okay.
Though I guess we've done a couple of quote unquote rubbish removal jobs, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
more hauling things away because we have the dump truck, not like an advertised service. So
Okay. Yeah. So would is lawn care does lawn care make make up the majority of your work then, or what is it, landscape projects?
it's really landscape projects. Lawn
Okay.
care, if you went back 10 plus years ago, it would have made a large portion of what we do here. But that's dwindled over the years as
Okay.
we've gotten into doing more like inclusive maintenance for sites where we're doing basically everything on a site,
Yeah.
all seasons. And as the landscape projects, our capabilities have grown with that. That seems to just take a bigger and bigger piece of the pie every single year.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned they're doing all different types of from I guess single family type homes to stratas and things like that. So what type of work do you generally prefer? Is it commercial or residential, and why?
My favorite to do is high-end residential.
Okay.
Those tend to breed the coolest experiences. You get to connect with some really unique individuals, and for the most part, they're all people who are extraordinarily successful in life.
Yeah.
And I've found that on every single one of those sites, there's cool challenges for me professionally.
Okay.
They're going to cause me to think. There's always out of the normal stuff going on, and I'm a person who likes challenges. I definitely don't like kind of the same thing every
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Um, that appeals to me. But then also getting to connect to those people, hear their story, learn about why they're successful.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd say for a majority of the clients, it's turned into a situation where I'll get to like hang out at their pool every once in a while and share a bottle of champagne, and
Oh, nice.
those people, or beer or whatever. But
Yeah.
those are the type of people that they've provided some excellent insight into my company, things that I can do better, even some things I can do personally. Those are the people that are more than willing to share their mistakes.
Okay.
And I've literally had clients say to me that, as we're hanging out chatting about things, they'll ask sometimes some like pressing questions, but then have some wonderful insight to come with that, in terms of not so much things we could do better, but things that they just see going on, and maybe things that sometimes we've excelled at that I don't even appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I found that we don't necessarily get those experiences from commercial clientele. Sometimes the money's good in those situations, but it's very like kind of cut and dry and cold and corporate. I do the work, I send the invoice, they pay, and that's great.
Yeah.
You got to have that. That's the cash flow end of any business. But to have the added perk of someone become kind of like a friend and an advisor, and to have that support and that people believe in you. That's priceless in itself, and I've been blessed to have that numerous times, and still have that to date, and it's something I definitely don't take for granted. So
Very cool. Very cool
yeah.
experiences there that you have surrounding yourself with those types of clients. And
Yeah, and it wasn't intentional. I never would have known that would have come with it, but to
yeah, yeah.
have people open up to you. And I guess part of it's, and I've had people say, I kind of become part of the family.
Mm.
We're there enough. I tend to become very close with whatever animals they have, be it
Oh,
cats
yeah,
or
yeah.
dogs,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, that kind of seals the deal right there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's situations where, because I'm there at 2, 3 in the morning dealing with snow, I've like let the dog out and stuff, and
Yeah, yeah.
nobody says anything. They're appreciative because the dog's barking away, and I know the door's open, and just let them out. Dog's happy, gets to do their business, and no one had to get out of bed. So
Yeah, yeah.
you become family with these people,
Yeah.
and you're at their house often enough. It's a wonderful thing if
Yeah, yeah.
you can get those additional perks of the job, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I can relate to that as well. I was cleaning up my office this past weekend, throwing stuff out, and I came across a card and letter from, unfortunately, one of my clients' uh, children, and it was from my client's funeral. And they
Mhm.
passed away, and it was one of the very first clients I ever had, and I serviced them for years and years and years. And in the letter, the daughter's talking about how appreciative she was of me, and she never met me, but she knew all about me from her mother, and her mother always talked about me, and always, she says in the letter, looked forward to Mondays when I would show up to, to mow the lawn all those years. And she was just so appreciative of how I took care of her mom, and how I was like part of her mom's life, and that, and you see those things, and it's like, wow, that's like, you don't think about that as the impact you're making when you're just there cutting a lawn.
A
But
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's I've unfortunately gone through something very similar the past year. I've had a couple clients pass away, and man, it gets you right in the feels,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when you unearth some things, just cleaning out the office, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's but that's wonderful. It shows, to me, that really speaks to the type of guy you are and the type of
Yeah,
business that you have, Julio.
yeah, yeah.
That you have that type of connection and relationship with
Yeah.
clients. That's
Sometimes it's to my detriment.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
say
yeah.
I've got one client still that I have had for years, and they're no longer even in an area I service.
Mhm.
Um, because of other clients like this that have passed away. And every year she, renews and says, "Are you sure? Like, this is a long way for you to come." And because she's been so loyal and stuff, I don't think I make any money on her, to tell you the truth,
Yep.
by the time I drive out there. But because she supported me when I was first starting out, it's like, I will service your lawn as long as you need me to service your lawn. And
Same here. I've got a
and
couple of those, and my girlfriend has even told me that I am not allowed to drop that, especially one individual sweet elderly lady who, God only knows how many years or days she's got left with us, but
yeah, yeah.
I'm with her till the end. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like thing. I go out there and it's like, man, I make no money on it. By the time I drive
precisely.
all the way over there and then have to drive all the way back to do the one lawn, but it's like, you know what? I don't mind it. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a nice little break, taking the little drive over there and back. And
Yeah, and I'll even add insult to injury because I'll stop every once in a while and let her offer me a glass of water. She'll make me a
yeah, yeah,
sandwich a couple times a year,
yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and I'll just totally blow things and spend like a half hour and chat with her. But
yeah, yeah,
I realize that might be the excitement for her for the week, and well,
yeah, yeah,
it's one of 40 things I've got to do that
yeah,
day. I no longer have any grandparents. I'm lucky enough; my girlfriend still has both her grandmothers, and they're basically grandmas to me at this point, and I'm
yeah,
lucky to
yeah,
have that. But I don't have any of my grandparents left, and that's not that I'm seeking grandparents or
yeah,
something, but
yeah, yeah,
I recognize that, like, if I could have lunch with my grandma, I would, but I can't. So maybe I'll have lunch with this client, and um, that's a way of paying it forward, and I can tell it really makes her day.
yeah,
And sometimes, that's what I was saying. Success is love, right?
yeah,
Sometimes, like, it's not. You can only do so many things in a day that make you, like, monetarily richer.
yeah,
And then it hits a point where it's you kind of feel like, at least me personally, it just is like, okay, how much more money do we really need to make
yeah,
if I'm not happy doing it, versus if I
yeah,
feel like I'm giving to people, be it having lunch with this client in that case. That's a way, that's success to me, really.
yes, yes,
Success is being able to stop and have that glass of water and
yeah,
that
yeah,
conversation. Or
yeah,
shortly here, she's the only client. She has some issues writing at this point, and I'll go over and have lunch and help her execute all her contracts for the year,
oh,
even though it probably doesn't make me any money.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's she that's something we've done for like 4 or 5 years now.
Nice.
And it just came because she called me and said, "Hey, I got all your stuff, but I'm not sure I can fill it out." And I could. She was kind of tentative about it, and I was like,
Yeah,
"One thing, I'll just come over. We'll have lunch. It'll be fine."
yeah,
Uh, and here we are. I'll
yeah,
probably be doing that in the next couple weeks here, but that's success, I guess.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I find too that there's always something to learn
Yes.
with those types of clients. They have a lot to offer. Another one that I had where it was another elderly lady. I went there to mow the lawn. It was a basic lawn, and she apparently loved roses. And her whole life was about growing roses and all that. And at this point she was on a respirator, and she had one
Mm,
of those tanks, oxygen tanks and stuff, and she couldn't do it anymore, and
okay.
asked me to prune her roses. And I was like, I have no idea how to prune roses, sorry, because I'm always upfront with people, right? I don't want to,
Sure.
especially if I know that this is their prized thing, right? And she said,
Yeah.
she was like, I'll teach you. And so I only worked for her one season because she passed away as well. But
Okay.
she taught me how to prune her roses. And for the past 8 years, I've done people's roses all based on the knowledge that she taught me that day on how to prune
Yes.
roses. And so her legacy lives on with every rose pruning job. And, little would she have known that her little backyard garden and her love of roses has now transpired into that knowledge being executed, among people's rose bushes all over the city when I'm doing rose jobs, right?
That's an
So,
amazing thing, and that's the beauty of it. That's it's kind of the same thing. Even going back to what we were talking about at the beginning with my dad talking to my neighbor. Who would have ever thought that Mike needs to get a job would turn
Yeah.
into me having a company, me being on this podcast,
Yeah. Yeah.
me being able to, support things that I believe in, and live basically a debt-free lifestyle, all because of one thing. And
One
same
person.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Well, one conversation, you being open to say, yeah, okay, you show me how to prune those roses. This is great. Now is, you almost probably couldn't even put a number on the amount of
Yeah.
work and joy that's brought you, and will continue to bring you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So this next question is another one of my favorites, and probably the question that gives the guests the most pause for thought, where they got to kind of think about the question. And that's share a time with us when you struggled in your business and what you learned or did to overcome it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I always enjoy people's answers to that, because
Yeah.
it gets the people thinking. But
Yeah.
for me, it was deciding what we really wanted to do as a business. I touched on earlier in this podcast, we had like 13 employees once. Now we're down to a couple, and getting to that point was definitely a little bit of a struggle for me. Um, uh, when we had labor was easily available in
Okay.
Southeast Michigan, as I was getting my company going, let's say from like 2005 to 2010, we dealt with the economic downturn here, and we're very heavy into the automotive industry, and there was a lot of people looking for jobs, especially even people in my age group that at that point had just earned a college degree or right
Hmm.
about there. There were lots of people that couldn't get a job with said degree and would be happy to come do anything,
Hmm.
even landscaping related. So it was easy. There was all sorts of work opportunities. We were growing. We got in with different developers, other landscape companies. Things were great. I had all these guys. And then it was we started getting more high-end, more profitable opportunities, and that was where I wanted to take the business, but that wasn't exactly where the labor wanted to take the business. And so it started to become a little harder to get guys, and then to add salt in the wound, we fast forward to closer to, like, let's say 2012 to
Yeah.
2015. The market turned up here, and because it was so far down, it
Okay.
came up very, very fast. And starting a couple years ago, there was a major run on labor. I'd say starting about 2015, where you had guys that within a matter of 6 8 months could have gone from making 11 to 13 $14 an hour doing landscaping to switching over to doing, say, construction work, or maybe even going get a commercial driver's license, and
Okay.
they now put themselves in the $20 to $35 an hour
Mhm.
range. And that happened so fast that it turned into landscape companies stealing each other's employees, and it became very hard to get guys, and even harder to get guys who wanted to do the tough jobs, who wanted to
Yeah.
think on jobs, do the high-end work. And that's really where we were growing too. And so to give you kind of the background context here, so it was me kind of having to look in the mirror and say, where do I want to take the business? What do I want to do here? And that was a little bit of a struggle, because it was having to let go of some of our lower end clientele, having to kind of rethink the way I was doing things. There were guys that had salary positions here. Some of them moved on. Some of them we
Okay.
moved on from. I'd invested in these guys. I actually sent them to, like, the introduction to ornamental horticulture
Okay.
class. And so these were people that not only time, but even monetarily we'd invested in. And to kind of have to swallow that some of that was basically just going to get thrown away.
Mhm.
And it's not really thrown away, because you learn from everything and better
Yeah.
yourself from every experience. But that was definitely the toughest period for me, in the sense that I had to uh, decide, do I want to stick on the plan that I thought was working, and continue to try and make that work, or did I want to take things in a different direction and maybe rethink the way that I do things, and I opted to do the latter there,
Okay.
and that has been a much better decision. And so, with some struggles, now comes success, and
Hmm.
I think we've kind of righted the ship here, and things run a lot more smoothly. Unfortunately, can't get rid of all the gray hair that I got along the way, but there was a point where, like, initially everything was gravy, and then after maybe 5-6 years of success, decided with labor being harder, my brother, who had a decent position in the company, decided he didn't really want to do this anymore. And there was a lot of things that seemed to happen over a period of like a year to 18 months. And so,
Okay.
unfortunately, it wasn't just like a week of struggle or a bad day. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of over like maybe that first year, struggling to like continue to like make the mold work and make everything fit, and the last 6 months kind of going, I don't know if I can do that anymore, or
Mm.
I should do that, or I even want to do that. And if I don't want to do that, then what is it that we want to do? And um, I'm really glad I took the moment to. My buddy Brian will sometimes use the phrase, "You got to slow down to speed up." And we definitely did that. I definitely like slowed things down as much as possible so that we could refocus, regroup, and that ended up being a very, very good thing for us to do. But man, it was not a fun 18 months. That was a lot of me doing things that I wasn't planning on doing or didn't really have the time to do, putting out fires, correcting a lot of messes, and but thankfully I'm out the other side. But yeah, that was the biggest struggle, was kind of like a little almost identity crisis of
Yeah,
who
yeah.
are we and what are we doing here.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Those employee challenges, especially when the market is kind of fluctuating so quickly like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, quite the change. I've never had employees, but I can relate to that uh, sort of quick changing conditions that are out of your control. With me, it was real estate pricing here, and
Sure. Yeah. That's
pricing
that's
just
been
going,
crazy for you guys.
yeah, just going through the roof, and finding one year where it was like at its peak, and you knew it was going to burst.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
there's no way this is sustainable, that every house in the city is $2 million, and that
Totally.
right? And clients were just leaving by droves, putting their houses for sale, saying, "We're cashing out. Like, our kids have moved out. The thing, it's just us in this house. We're cashing out. Like,
Yeah.
$2 million worth for our house. Like, we'll move somewhere else and sit on that, equity and all that sort of stuff, right?" And they were
Yeah.
going, and I found myself like half my business in one summer was gone,
Sure.
from people selling, right? And I was like, whoa, this is like crazy, like overnight. Like, I did not expect this to happen. And thankfully, the government stepped in and
Yes.
put in some rules for foreign investors, basically saying, hey, if you're not going to be living in the house, if you're just buying it for investment and you don't actually live here, then your property taxes are basic, and your property transfer taxes are basically like 10 times more than a person. And that, like, overnight cooled the real estate market.
It needed it. That was a insane situation, and it had a ripple effect, like you're saying, even at things that no one would have face value thought of. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, the guy who cuts the lawn at all these properties it's messing with his business
yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
everybody down the line.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. um so what is your favorite thing about being self-employed?
That I'm in control of my own destiny.
Okay.
I learned, I think I touched on it earlier, when I worked at the ice arena, or I was the dishwasher, or even my time as a musician. I was on everybody else's schedule. I
Yeah.
was on their pay grade. I had people to answer to, people who, not that people to answer to is a bad thing, but and I was doing all of it for like free or pennies on the dollar, especially in the music
Yeah.
industry. Sometimes way too much of that goes for free,
Yeah. Yeah.
or for later futures that never come.
Yeah.
And Taking all that to heart at a young age, I realized that um, if I'm in control of my own destiny, I'm probably better off betting on myself.
Hmm.
There's a risk in anything you do, but I've kind of paid attention enough and learned that I can bet on myself. I can put the ball in my court, and I'm more likely to win than putting the ball in like a group's court, or that my boss or
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
at a record label has my
yeah,
best interests at heart. Um, and now that I'm down the line here, I know that was definitely the correct decision.
hmm,
Especially when I meet up with some old bandmates or people. It's You get to see where life has taken us, and
yes,
I don't regret my decision to kind of grab the bull by the horns and do things. Maybe even walk away from some friendships and some opportunities to do this,
yeah.
but it's the path that I've beaten for myself, and I'm not looking back. I'm continuing on the path, so I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. I was grinning there, laughing kind of to myself as you were talking. Some of those experiences there when you were mentioning the music industry and time, putting time in for hopefully something. And when I was younger, out of high school, I went to school. I've had a job since I was 11,
Wow.
delivering newspapers, things like that. I've always, had some sort of gig going on to make some money. And for years through high school, elementary school, and high school, I saved all that money and I dumped it all after high school and went into audio engineering. And I went to
Nice.
school and did that course and got my diploma. And so when you were talking there, I was like, yep, I can remember countless days, years volunteering for free,
Oh yeah.
driving downtown Vancouver, paying for parking and gas for me to go work for free, to go get
Mm-hmm.
coffee for these guys in these recording studios so I could be sitting in the same room with them and looking over their shoulders and getting the chance to, do some, you know, uh, overlooking an album being recorded or doing sound effects for post production for a movie or something like that. And you put in, but there's only so many years you can do it until you sort of look at yourself and go like, is this really gonna, you know eh, I
Yeah,
can't keep going
that's
on with this, like doing this for free and all that. And
that's
you
where the
always tease the
music industry gets it wrong. I think is
yeah
there's some people making a ton of the money and a majority of the people not, and everyone thinks of like the poor musician in a bar, but no one thinks of Julio at a
yeah
younger age sitting there getting coffee for
yeah
people. And
washing
I've
their
been
dishes and stuff.
totally. I
Yeah.
gosh, I remember my times as a assistant studio engineer, and I feel like I basically cleaned the studio.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's what I did all the time. It was just
really good at wrapping cables.
yeah, yeah. The nice perk was I got to I had my own key and stuff, and they
Nice.
only worked Monday to Friday there, so
Okay.
I could go in on the weekends and have the whole studio to myself and do my own projects and play around and learn and stuff like that. So that was the biggest perk for me, but it was
Sure.
still like it was tough paying for gas without a job because I
Oh
have
yeah.
to work there and you're doing it all for free. And they would dangle the carrot of, maybe one day we'll give you minimum wage to
It's so true, though. It's
yeah,
so true.
yeah,
There's a girl I grew up with who started a business that's supposed to it's supposed to be like equality and people paying for music. And I was talking to another friend. I'm like, I'm not sure how she's going to get water out of a rock there, because I was like,
yeah,
the whole industry kind of works like that. And I was like,
yeah,
I don't think, I was like, it's even if she's splitting things up a little bit, I was like, I still feel like it's the same people getting paid here, and it's the
yeah,
same
yeah,
people who aren't getting paid
yeah,
not
yeah,
getting paid.
yeah, yeah,
And the system will still continue on broken, because you'll still have
yeah.
the people who you'll do all that and you don't even get credit and liner notes that no one reads. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty funny. I found myself um, taking longer and longer lunch breaks
Sure.
and not wanting to go back.
Yeah.
And that was like sort of that was the day, right? I was like, something's wrong here. I used to love this. This is what I
Yes.
thing. But when you know that you're not gonna ever get paid for doing this, at least with them, or
Yes.
or something, it was like, why am I doing this, right? Like the whole point was to invest this time, but after years, it's like, if it hasn't happened yet, it's not gonna happen. I think
It's not going to happen, and the friends that I've had to continue on with it, I one of them's done real well. He's gotten into like commercials and movies, and
okay.
a company that does that, and that's a pretty steady line of work. They thankfully got a lot of large corporate clients, and it does pretty well. But the rest of the guys that have kind of turned into road warriors here, some
Yeah,
of them
yeah,
have fared better than others, but
yeah,
it's all glam, and but not really what everyone sees. And
yes,
just last week, I was actually a buddy of mine came in town. We were sitting on his tour bus, and I was chatting a little bit. And he's a pretty well known individual, and he was even kind of lamenting, like, yeah, you would think there's a lot of perks with that gig, but there's not.
yeah,
And a lot of people would have no idea and go, really? Oh, I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that would be a pretty sweet gig. And it's like, no, it's just a lot of stress and people telling you things you can't do with yourself.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, so it's funny you're telling that story, and I like totally was right there,
yep.
relating
Yep.
with every part
Anybody
of it.
who's been in the industry knows that feeling. I feel like
Yeah,
that's like what do all lawn guys have in common? What do all music guys have in common? That's
yeah,
one
yeah,
of them.
yeah, absolutely. So getting back to the lawn care part of it there,
Yes, yes.
in what ways do you market your business, and maybe share your number one marketing tip?
Number one marketing thing that we've done and how we market ourselves is really just the branding that we have on trucks and trailers. We have a website. Truthfully, the whole like Instagram thing, a buddy of mine, he does some like web marketing, a website design. He was trying to build out a portfolio, and so he was the one who set up like our Facebook business page and
Nice.
Instagram page years back. And it was just so like he could say like, yeah, he did this, and I was like, great, thanks, man.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of parlayed in, but we truthfully don't do a lot with advertising.
Okay.
Our core clientele finds ways to keep me busier than I'd probably
Yeah.
like to be most of the
Yeah.
year. In fact, there were multiple cases last week where we had kind of a long duration snow event, and that meant that I was there servicing some sites during the day, and I ran into a property manager who was in from out of state at one of the estates and was saying, yeah, we need new outdoor lighting, and these steps over here have to get redone. I'm going, oh, great. Perfect, and that's,
Mhm.
I appreciate the opportunity, but it's like these people are going to want this done in the spring rush and we have like no time.
Yeah.
I go to the next site, and it's the president of the small condo complex, and he's like, yeah, we got to get together. I want to talk about the spring color, and we're going to add some trees over here. And I'm just like, great, all right, that's perfect. We're going to figure out how to do this, but
Yeah.
without even trying, our dance card kind of is perennially full here. So it's just kind of people seeing us out
Yeah.
there. I'd say the closest thing we do to advertising is it's really just word of mouth of
Okay.
that level of clientele. People at that echelon of society tend to entertain. Like I mentioned, some of these people have like pools and cool
Yeah.
patios and stuff, and the question tends to come up, hey, so who does all this? This looks great.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough that I have some great clients that are willing to name drop me and
Yeah.
refer me. And probably once a month, if not more, get the text or phone call, just referred you to so-and-so.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate that they do that, because
Yeah.
when people reach out, I'm pretty hard to qualify people, or pretty harsh
Yeah.
when I qualify people sometimes. And that's one of the first questions I ask is, so how did you find out about us? Because like I mentioned, sometimes we're booked a month or two out easily, especially in the spring. And the only way to kind of break through that is if you're one of our like top clients, relatives, or best friends.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I will be meeting with you as soon as possible, and
Yeah.
we're going to make things happen, especially
Yeah.
for the right dollar amount versus if you're like, oh yeah, I saw you out and blah blah blah. It's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, the answer's not no, but
Yeah.
we're not going to break the schedule for you
Yes,
here.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's basically what we do for advertising. Years ago, starting out, it was postcards and
Yeah.
flyers and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But I pulled the plug on that kind of when we were going through the slow down to speed up phase.
Yeah.
As we kind of got beyond that, I'm going, why am I getting any postcards made? I'm going, our schedule is fuller than I want it to be now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of been the case for the past several years now.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll run with it. If things slow down, we'll have some fun with advertising. But for now, it's just trying to keep up with demand.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that as well. It's always good when you have customers like that that are willing to, drop your name. I have one that's in a pretty visible area and gets a lot of foot traffic, people walking.
Nice. Yeah.
And she's always telling me people are always stopping when we're out here asking what we're doing to our lawn. It looks so good. And we always tell them that we have a really special lawn guy. And then we give them your name and stuff. And so it's always nice when you have your customers are your best advocates.
That's huge.
Yeah.
The work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I love those because there's no quote unquote selling that you have to do.
Yes. Yeah.
People are calling because they want Julio or they want Bedell Property Management.
Yeah.
It's kind of the ball's in your court. You got to screw it up at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like what you said with them when it's them asking if you'll go and service a certain area because their relative lives there and stuff. And it's one of those, like you said, you could, if you're, if that's an area that you're servicing or something, it's selling without selling. Like they know what to expect already. They've seen the work. They know that you're on that, price range and stuff like that. So they're already sold at that point. It's just a matter, can you fit them in sort of thing. Right. So,
that tends to be the trickiest one, and I know you run into the same thing. Is actually like there's 7 days in a week and only so many hours in a day. And we talked about this being a lifestyle, and as great as that is, like we do have to like eat and sleep and maybe see our family every once in a while. So there's only so much we can do, no matter what demand is, and sometimes, especially depending what it is, it's not we'll get a guy in a pickup truck and send him out. It doesn't always equate the results that were sold. So
yeah, absolutely. So this next question actually is a brand new question. I added it today. You're the first person that I'll be asking this question. It's not a hard question. It's a very simple question, but I'm kind of building it up here because ironically, you answered the question already just sitting down.
Nice.
And that is, do you use any software to manage your business? And
oddly enough, I do. Yeah. Thanks to Jobber for giving me the shirt. It was clean. I wore it today. Jobber is part of what we use. I stumbled upon them because before I ever used Jobber, we actually used QuickBooks. My uncle, fortunate, he worked for the big three, did self-auditing for them for a long time, and now in his retirement, his fun job is keeping us on the straight and narrow and making sure that things go well for us, since he does have the same last name, so has that Bedell pride, and it's funny, he'll show up to meetings and I've given him like a couple sweatshirts and shirts, and he'll like show up with the sweatshirt on like game time. Like, I'm on it. But so thank you, Uncle Ralph, you're the man. But so he hooked us up with QuickBooks Online real early on, and we used that for a while. And actually, oddly enough, I happen to have the old service logs that we used to use back in the day. I actually came across those and was going to do something with them for Debt-Free Landscaper. It just happens to be sitting here, oddly enough. But after trying to decipher people's handwriting, this is back when I had a bunch of employees and people losing them or them getting wet, or I don't know how dogs ate them, but I'm sure that happened too. And it was kind of like, we need to, it's 21st century. It was like, I don't know, 2012 or 13 or something. It's like, everyone's got a smartphone now. Like we we could do better. And
Yeah.
QuickBooks Online had just launched what they called like apps, and they were
Okay.
different programs that synced up with QuickBooks Online. And there just happened to be this Jobber one, and it was
Okay.
like right about this time of year, February, March, where I was like, I need to get something figured out. We're about to go into our spring busy season. I got to have a game plan to like give to
Yeah. Yeah.
these couple crews I've got. Otherwise, we're going to be filling out more service logs, and I'm going to be deciphering handwriting at every evening, and you don't know where anyone is in real time, and it's trying to get people to answer their phones, on and on.
Yeah.
So Jobber was a huge answer to us, because all of a sudden everyone could see everyone's schedule, and in real time I could see things getting checked off, and we've run with it ever since. And
Awesome.
more recently got to actually kind of connect with them and try and work on some stuff together here. But yeah. So Jobber, QuickBooks Online, those are mainly it. We use a couple different design programs,
Okay.
but those don't really have too much of like a number management end of things. So I'd
Okay.
say 99% of it seems to either be in Jobber or QuickBooks. I spend
Okay.
probably, gosh, I don't know, several hours every day
Yeah. Yeah.
on one or the other. So
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So I think we kind of got a gist of this in some of your answers, but I'll ask it anyways. So one of the most common questions I get in my business, including from some of my own clients sometimes, is what do I do in the winter?
hmm.
So is there a winter or off season in your business? And if so, what do you do in the winter?
I wish there was an off season in my business. There used to be back, I'd say the first 5 or so years of
Okay.
my business. The first couple of years, there really was a Bedell Property Management. We really didn't do any snow and ice service in house. I did work for another couple companies that actually we ended up subcontracting for down the line, and those have ended up becoming great relationships and assets throughout the years. But initially, actually, the way one of those relationships even happened was we bought our first commercial lawnmower. I found it on eBay, and it happened to
Okay.
be coming from a local company in here, and they're a little bit bigger. I'd say they've got like 20, 30 trucks, and
Okay.
it's like fall. I'm picking up this 36-inch walk behind mower that lasted like 4 months and was then toast. But
Yeah.
one of the things they said to me when I was picking it up was like, "Hey, you want to plow snow this winter?" And at the time, I was like, "No, I don't." But then I realized, like, wait a minute, I probably do. Like, I have an opportunity to learn on somebody else's equipment. These
Hmm.
guys seemed all right. They seemed to be legitimate. I got to chatting with them a little bit more, and ended up actually being, like I mentioned, a great long-term opportunity. But the beauty of that was, like, I was still in school. They had the understanding with that.
Yeah.
I would be able to like go on vacation for a week in February with my family if I wanted to. And so like I didn't have to be there for every storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first handful of years, the winter was kind of like recoup, finish school, maybe do a little bit of snow plowing.
Okay.
But once we got into snow and ice for ourselves, past like the first couple years when we were just trying to cut our teeth, and
Hmm.
we weren't really doing any salting, so we were only going out at plowable events. And there's a big difference in Southeast Michigan that's maybe going out 8, 10 times versus 40, 50 times.
Okay.
So there's a big difference there. So first few years, winter was kind of a downtime. Ever since then, there is unfortunately no real downtime for my company.
Okay.
I've kind of got to just come up with a couple little times to get away, maybe like at the tail end of seasons, or almost kind of like mark out a time on a calendar and just like take the time.
Okay.
But yeah, for winter, it's full bore ahead with snow and ice management these days. And time off sounds really great, but fortunately, I don't really have any
Okay.
vacation time scheduled over a couple months. I might try and come up with a couple days. Actually, Brian and his wife were hounding me the other day about that, on how they think I can maybe use them off. So
There you go. So, what are your future plans or goals for your business?
Yeah, so those have definitely changed over the past couple years. If you asked me a couple years ago, they'd probably be different than what they are today. And that's something important. They've always kind of got to be able to change those a little bit, go with the flow. But the goals at this point are to continue to service the high-end clientele and stay the course with that. But also, long term, on the personal investment side, I intend on purchasing some commercial property.
Okay.
And a part of that is that the company will maintain all those sites. Through working with some of the clients we have, I've come to realize that for better or worse, we're kind of what can break the bank, especially in snow and ice. And they've mentioned like, yeah, if we had our own in-house firm, maybe this would like go a little better, but there is no option for that. So,
Yeah.
and thankfully we're receptive to kind of help work with the numbers and steer things so we're not brutalizing them. But on that note, I've been encouraged by those people like, yeah, man, if you own property, you'd probably be able to hedge things a little bit better than we can. And that is part of my long-term investment, quote unquote,
Okay.
retirement plan. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something that I haven't been able to really put out with Debt-Free Landscaper yet. But that I'd like to is that really for guys like you and me, we're on the side where this is our high income skill. You get to like the company I mentioned I bought that mower from, the owner's not really involved. It's almost more of an investment, like a passive
Okay.
investment. So this really
Yeah.
isn't his high income skill. But for guys like us, this is our ability to make money.
Yeah.
And there are different things you can do tax wise or otherwise to move things around, shelter things so that you can, much like people have the tax advantages of a 401k in the W-2 employee realm. It's my goal to buy some real estate over the years, and that will be part of my retirement
Okay.
package. And even the land I own and live on now, eventually, my goal 20 years from now is to probably turn those into apartment complexes. So
Okay.
there's all sorts of fun plans. I hope
Yeah.
to achieve them. I've understood probably more the past couple of years than at any point in time that some of those goals have to be malleable a little
Yeah.
bit as things change economically, both
Yeah.
personally and even just holistically as a worldwide or even just country's economy.
Yeah.
But that would be the intent, is to utilize the high income skill that I have to better myself and be able to take care of my family and obviously part of that is probably do that with low leverage too, with the whole debt free thing. But
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
those are the long term goals, are acknowledging that I'm at where I'm at and making the most of that, and trying to be smart about all the money I'm blessed to make. So
Okay, perfect. So next question that I have here is, what is the weirdest thing that you've seen or has happened to you in your business?
oh man, weirdest thing. Had some weird things happen that probably aren't like podcast appropriate with things I've seen on clients' properties. So it probably won't even delve into any of that.
Okay.
Because that's man, you work for people that have more money than they know what to do with, and sometimes they feel the rules don't necessarily apply. And
Oh, okay.
you're kind of like family sometimes, and so you get to see people, for who they are.
Oh,
And
okay.
every once in a while, there's been some surprises over the year, and I've thankfully been able to just kind of keep a straight face and go,
Okay.
okay, great. But weirdest thing, recently I saw on an old client's property that I don't know who's maintaining it now, but there was just like water flowing out into a main road, and I was just like, that's different.
Hmm.
But like that's not really that weird, but yeah, I'd say basically the weird stuff probably isn't PC, and we probably shouldn't share
Okay.
that on the
Okay.
podcast.
No problem. No problem.
But
We'll keep it.
yeah,
We'll keep it on the down low.
that's right. We'll just let everyone's
There
imaginations
you
simmer there.
go. Awesome. So this next question is another one of my absolute favorites. And that is, I want you to share your best piece of advice with someone just starting out in the business, but I want you to come from it or come at it from a point of view of this is somebody that you know and you only want the best from. So I want like your absolute, like this is a person that, you know, it's a nephew, something like that, in that
Yeah.
sort of thing where you want to see them succeed. What would you tell them if they came up to you and said, I'm thinking about starting a lawn care business?
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I mentioned earlier, it's probably good we're doing this today because if you asked the other week, I'd probably been like, save yourself the time and don't do it. But no, that's the wrong answer. For me, it kind of be a multi-tiered thing. I'd say they're already on the right track by asking advice.
Yeah.
And it would be find some mentors, people both inside and outside the industry who, much like you said, have your best interests at heart and are just trying to give you an insight to their context. So that would be one part of it. The next part, and we kind of touched on it, and it's part of this podcast, is having some goals and something that I haven't always done the best job of is having like the end goal in mind. I actually just kind of shared kind of what I've developed those end goals to be, but those weren't always there, especially at the beginning stages. There was a lot of like, get more trucks, get more lawnmowers, get more accounts. And those are great. But what you don't realize as you're like trying to like level up and achieve is it's like, and then what? Okay, well, yeah, I want to get a truck and a snowplow and do snow. Okay, well, and then what? What are you going to do with that? And if you have the end goal in mind, which is not easy to do, it's real easy to say have an end goal in mind. It is not easy to come up with, but to have that and then be okay with it changing. And then the last step would be something that I touched on that I'm very blessed to have is from the get-go, if you really want to do this, it's easiest to start with the correct financial footing if possible. And I feel like a lot of people get into this industry because they're like trying to make some money and trying to make ends meet. And obviously then that's kind of counterintuitive. If you're just out there trying to make what you can, then that's fine. And it's okay to kind of acknowledge that and meet you where you're at. But if this is going to continue beyond that, and this isn't just like I'm going to pay some bills and get myself through college or get myself out of said hole or said life situation and then move on to something else, if that's not the intent, which obviously it's not for you or I, we're in the game seriously here, to take the time and structure your business correctly. Have someone who, if you can't do it yourself, can help teach you the financial end of it. There's nothing worse than realizing like you probably overpaid in taxes for those past however many years, or you could have been doing things differently. So that it's kind of that three-pronged approach. But I would say if you can hone in on those three things and wrap your mind around it, you're probably going to go farther than maybe even I have with it.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like the secret sauce. If you've got good mentors and an actual solidified plan. I mean, let's be real. How many landscape businesses take the time to write a business plan? Not very many of them.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's like down the line when they're trying to buy a building or have some financing come into play or something like that, which is a whole other bag of worms. So to hone in on those things, I think is kind of the secret sauce that I would give to anybody. And truthfully, I've kind of had the opportunity with a debt-free landscaper and all my friends around the world here who DM me on a daily basis, picking my brain, and I know they do it with my buddies Brian and Brandon as well. It's the same kind of advice I feel like we regurgitate constantly. those three things, and then it gets more individualized from there. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of be maybe the last little bit is like, you're going to realize that either you're going to be hyper generic with this or like very niche oriented, and listen to the advice that's out there based on the context that you're living in.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're very generic, there's probably more that will apply to you versus if you're kind of weird and doing something different like I'm doing, that you can get into stuff that's off the beaten path, and you're solving things for people.
Yeah.
Then what works and is kind of broadcast out there maybe isn't what works for you, and it's knowing when to listen. So
Okay. Perfect.
yeah.
I want to transition now, and you mentioned their debt-free landscaper.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into that as well. So maybe tell everybody about what debt-free landscaper is. I know you have two Instagram accounts. You have your Bedell Property Management one, but then you also have the debt-free landscaper one. So maybe tell everybody about that, how it got started.
Yeah, basically it was a offshoot of kind of my relationship with my buddy Brian Fullerton from Brian's
Okay.
Lawn Maintenance. He was the one who I poured into him. I poured into his buddy Brandon just by
Yeah.
us hanging out together. It wasn't
Yeah.
like necessarily a planned or calculated thing, but it was after just months of working together and
Just talking shop and stuff.
yeah, and sharing
Mhm.
different documents that my company
Okay.
uses
Yeah.
that they were like, you realize that you could probably help out a lot of people with these. And I'm like, huh, yeah, I probably could. And
Mhm.
it was Brian who was like, yeah, you're if success is love, Mike, then maybe you need to spread the love.
Yeah.
Um, it's great these documents work well for you, but what if you gave people an opportunity to pick your brain, use some of the secret sauce that your company has. And it was one of those like, that's so crazy, it just might work moments.
Yeah.
And so that's where it is. It's just helping other landscape contractors grow their knowledge, confidence, and income. The last part, the income, kind of comes from the knowledge and confidence.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted a platform, and I haven't gotten to do this as much as I want to, but my buddy Caleb Almond does a really good job of showing like all the mistakes he makes.
Yes. Yes.
And that's something that like I want to be better at doing, but can't really necessarily do all the time on the Bedell Property Management one.
Yeah.
Got to kind of keep things. There you go. That's the secret sauce right there. That's what's up. There's a guy who knows what's going on. Really, really smart guy. So I can't always like not put my best foot forward on the Bedell Property Management one. I've got clients that look at it, and it's linked to our website, and probably showing some epic failures on there wouldn't be so great, but I wanted debt-free landscaper to also kind of be able to show like the other side of me that's not so like uber professional and pretty
Yes.
landscape jobs and projects we've worked on, or epic snow plowing video,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
liquid de-icer, whatever it is. Um, to have something where I could kind of communicate with people a little bit better. I had a lot of people DMing me on the Bedell Management one, and it was just kind of overwhelming, especially mixed in with some clients reaching out on there. And so I wanted to, if possible, kind of separate them out and have
Yep.
one for like chatting with the industry guys, and then
Yep.
another one that's like more showcasing my company's abilities and work, and separating the two out just seemed like made the most sense.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's exactly why I did Lawn Care Business Success as its own thing, because it's, when thinking about and seeing, I would watch the YouTube videos, the Keith Kalfuses, all those things
yeah.
before I even started all this, and I thought, hey, that's like cool. Something's calling me to try to do something like this, to do a podcast, thing. But I also don't want my customers to necessarily see it, because it's not focused on them. It's about the behind the scenes that they're not really maybe interested in. It's about, the business side of it, and helping other guys with what, just experiences I've gone through and things like that. And so I always thought, hey, I'll just separate it, have two separate ways to go about it.
That's super smart. I think that's kind of thoughtful way to go about things, because otherwise, like you said, the muddling of the two, you never know the context someone's coming from or how they're going
Yeah,
to view it, and it's sometimes best to kind of keep things separate. And
yeah, yeah.
so something that you'll probably see from me over the next couple months is stuff we screw up on, or mistakes I've made, or I want to talk
Okay.
more about, like things that went wrong, because the focus really is guys that are starting out, and it's kind of taken me on the Wayback Machine of
Yeah, yeah.
things that I haven't even thought of. I'm someone who, because this is such a lifestyle for me, I try not to dwell on the bad things. I actually do a really good job of like suppressing them and burying them.
Yep.
And this has kind of been cathartic because it's been bringing out things that didn't go well the first handful of years that I purposely haven't thought about, because in a sense we've overcome them as a company. But I think there's value in sharing that, and hopefully my mistakes can be other people's gains beyond just the other facets of debt-free landscaper. So you have that to look forward to,
Yeah,
watching.
awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask
Watching.
what sort of things do you want to offer through it? Well, okay, so I'll take a step back here. So
Yeah.
what for people checking out debt-free landscaper, um, what is available to them today? Now, I know I've checked out Debt Free Landscaper, and I've seen some of the things that you offer. So, but maybe tell the people out there that don't know or haven't
Yeah.
heard about what is exactly available.
Yeah, so at the current moment, we've got my company's lawn contract, our fertilization contract. That's also an irrigation contract. As to me, the two are very intertwined. If you fertilize and don't irrigate, no success. If you irrigate but don't fertilize, probably not a lot of
Yeah,
success. So to me, the two are tied. Other ones are horticultural services contract. And then I have those offered as a sense, you could call them a bundle, but really what we present to a majority of our clients is what we call their landscape assessment. And it's actually right about this time of year they get that. And it gives them the ability to sign up for the maintenance related services, from spring cleanup through fall cleanup, all the fertilization, mulch, you name it, lawn mowing, and reserve those spots on our schedule. A lot of that stuff on our end is prepaid. So what I've done is I've taken those contracts, pulled the Bedell Property Management logo out of it, pulled our company name off of it, I made it a little bit more generic so that
yeah,
people can download the document, insert their company information, and in just a handful of minutes, they've now got a professional document that has a social media release in it, allows them to post stuff on Instagram and document things, has an indemnification clause, and each of the contracts just has some pertinent um, I guess you'd say kind of clauses to them in terms of like wet turf damage and
yeah, yeah.
items of interest and who's responsible for marking things,
Yep,
notification, cancellations, just all those fun little
all that sort
things.
of stuff. Yep.
But we have that bundled together, and that's, like I said, typically what a lot of our clients get. And then we've got the residential snow contract on there. We've got our commercial snow contract. We've got our snow log on there that we use even this morning, the show that we were out documenting things, and like the fun Brian, one of Brian's
Instagram
sites,
post
we
there.
came
Yeah,
across cost some. I guess that was kind of a weird thing. A
yeah,
sign. You asked to go back a couple questions. Yes, weird things. To have a sign blown over
yeah,
on
yeah,
a property, but that was something that we were able to document, shoot off to Brian with a video and picture attached, and
yeah.
he was able to send it right on to the property management company, and then go out and take some of his
Yeah.
own
And
photos.
just to clarify for people, because when you say like a sign, people might think, okay, it's like a 2x4 sign or a plywood. Now this is like a monument sign that's lit up on a concrete or stone base, and
Yes,
it was knocked over. You show
yes,
up to the property and it's knocked over, and you can see all the LED lighting and stuff inside of it and all that. And
Yeah, I originally thought like someone had maybe skidded off the road and gone into it, and it was when
Yeah.
I got out of the truck, I'm like, there are no tire marks. I was like, this is
Hmm.
really the wind took this over. But so there's that. There's our commercial snow and ice contract, which is a little bit more involved. Has some fun clauses for like salt availability and the fluctuation of price for that. A little deeper indemnification clause and stuff that just helps protect your business. And then I'd say our big hot item that we've had people download from all over the world is our free budget tool that I put up
Okay.
there. And I'm real pumped that people have been downloading that, hopefully making good use of that, because I know that's as I mentioned here already, the one of the secret sauces is knowing your numbers and knowing where it's at, and you have all these ideas in your head and dreams and hopes, and
Yeah.
the numbers don't lie, and they're not always very nice, but they're important, and if you want to be successful, that's kind of a crucial part. So I figured put that one out there and help everybody out. So those are, I think, are basically all the current offerings.
Okay.
There's about to be a bunch more that drops here in the next week or so. I've kind of
Okay.
wanted to do it over the past month, and we've gotten like all the winter snow in like 3-4 weeks, and
Yeah. Yeah.
been run ragged here a little bit, and kind of had to pick my battles, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
able to do as much with Debt Free Landscaper as I wanted to. But shortly here, we're going to have a contract for like landscape installation projects
Okay.
that'll be coming out. And then beyond that, just some additional like operating agreement type stuff,
Yeah.
and helping people formulate their business, and kind of steer things in the right direction, beyond just the tools to like sell the jobs at that point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of the short term. Even beyond that, there might even be some like tax guidance type stuff in terms of
Okay.
like helping people. This is something that I wouldn't even thought of, but it was actually Brandon and Brian's suggestion, was like dealing with 1099s and stuff
Hmm.
that we dealt with a month or so back. To me, and it's all things like, if I don't think something's hard, have you ever heard the term Dunning-Kruger before?
Nope.
All right, so let's see. Apparently, these two scientific guys, I'm
Okay.
guessing their last names, and basically they have a theory that says people who like things are really easy, or they're quote unquote like smart, or blah blah
Yeah. Yeah.
blah. They view the world for like, well, it was easy for me, or if I get an A on a test, everyone could get an A on a test.
Yeah.
Like, this must be easy for everyone. And then there's the inverse of that: the people who are like quote unquote dummies, or the people who are a little bit slower,
Yeah.
view the whole world through that and think that like everyone's like that. And Brian all the time says to me, Dunning-Kruger, because I'll like, for something like 1099s, I've done them so long, and I'm like, da 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 da, done. Takes a couple hours.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not actually that easy. If you don't know the
Yeah.
boxes, like, no dice. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, the due date's in like 2 days, so I'm probably not doing anything with that this year, because it's kind of it'd be one of those, if you're watching this video, you're already
Yes.
not
Yes.
in IRS compliance. But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so, but that was light bulb for some future content. So down the road, it's that, and we'll just see. I'm kind of going to, I'm putting out things that I know that I have that will help people, but it's gonna eventually, my goal would be to be kind of community led, where people are voicing their need of what's something that they need or struggling with,
Yeah.
and if I can help people with it, I'm gonna. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and a lot of people listening to this who have followed the podcast, they may be thinking, Julio, isn't this like a conflict of interest? You sell contracts on your website and stuff as well, and you know what? I have no issue with
yeah,
it. Mine are, I've got, I think, 2 things out there available. They're pretty generic. They're more all-encompassing. Yours are
sure,
very specific for
yes,
certain tasks. And what does Brian always say? What is it? Rising tide raises all boats, right? So
exactly,
there's enough for everybody to go around. So I have no problem promoting people doing the same sort of things. There's
exactly.
there's no issue. Yours are very specific and could absolutely be exactly what somebody's looking for that mine don't cover or mine don't offer. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
vice versa to that. I think at the end of the day, I'd much rather have somebody better themselves and use a tool, and whether it's something from your website or my
Yeah,
website, or even like the guys over at Dirt Monkey University.
yeah,
Like, believe it or not, we're all actually friends and
yeah,
like each other and want each other to do well. But beyond do well, we really want our entire community to do well, and that's I think part of actually what's even kind of fostered my relationship with Jobber is what kind of brought us together was this whole like community, and them really wanting to be a part of the lawn care community here. And once I realized that that's really what it is over the past couple of
yeah,
years, and I think Instagram's really helped with that, and
yeah,
YouTube. But it's made us feel, gosh, I really wish I had something like this starting out my first couple of years. I imagine I'd be a lot further along. There
yes,
was like the sounding board of like the people at the community college, and they were great. Or other people I knew in the industry, or even I grew up around the mall development industry, so there was some feedback from that. But there was no Instagram, there was no YouTube
mhm,
videos to. Google was kind of like even like an infantile thing, and
yeah, yeah,
you just get pages of results that most of them were what, like advertisements or other companies, and
yeah, yeah.
there was no for like the lawn guy starting out, there was really no database of
No,
information. So the fact that there's all these different ones out there, it's at the end of the day, I just want someone to better themselves, and if I'd just be happy to see them support someone that I want to see do well, like yourself.
yeah, 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 absolutely. So do you see for like the debt-free landscaper part of it, do you see yourself maybe doing potentially like webinars or anything in the future,
If that's
like live
where
training or anything like that?
Yeah, if that's where things went, I'm certainly open to that. I know there's already been talk of like a couple like speaking engagements that might bubble up here over the next 6 8 months. So
Okay, yeah.
that'd be kind of fun to get into. And if that
Yeah,
pans,
like I thought right away, like GIE speaker, you know?
yeah, we'll see. I maybe. I basically kind of like I said, I want it to in a sense be community led. So if that's like you brought up Brian Fullerton, the whole like rising tide raises
Yeah,
all ships. I think he's mentioned even on your podcast that like his barometer of like do something, won't do something is like,
yeah,
well, if it helps him grow professionally and will help people, his whole community will benefit from it, then like absolutely, let's see what it's all about. I'm basically game for it. Versus like if those lines don't really cross, it's a lot harder to say yes. So yeah, as long as it was something that was all about helping people and something that I believed in, yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that will kind of be the determining factor is, like we touched on earlier in the podcast, Bedell Property Management does keep me busy sometimes a
yeah,
little more than I want. And so there might be some lulls in content, or just times that I've got to say no because while I'm all about helping people, I can't lose sight of the fact that I do have responsibilities. I do have people
yes,
that have expectations of me, and that I got to spend some time with family.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
also very very important to me. But if I've got the time, I'm gonna make the time.
yeah,
So.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good point you raised there. I did episode last week where I did a solo episode. I didn't have a guest
Mhm.
lined up, and I was talking about getting ready for spring coming up,
Yes.
and just being consumed with making videos and podcasts and stuff. It's over the winter has been literally a full-time job for me.
Sure.
From the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I am still working. Like I'm always doing something. and trying to, get these ideas out of my head and put them
Yeah.
into the thing. And, I talked about how I normally send out a email to clients using MailChimp about a month in advance.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that it dawned on me that like we're like maybe 2 weeks away from the season and I hadn't done it yet because I've been so consumed with making videos and podcasts. And I was like, oh yeah, I actually have a real job that I have to
That's
I,
it.
I have a business that I have to actually take care of because this doesn't pay the bills. This is all,
Correct.
thing, but it's so much fun and you get so into it. And, I've been really enjoying the process that you get lost in it and you forget, like,
Totally.
oh yeah, like the time's not standing still. The spring is coming and there's stuff that I need to do to be ready for that part of it. So yeah, when you mentioned, that you do have responsibilities.
That's
and
it.
things,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I remember listening. I actually was listening to that podcast the other day and I was like, yeah, yeah, I actually am kind of in the same boat where like some people have got their contracts and some people haven't quite got them yet. And,
Yeah.
that was actually one of my big like knock them out this week, and then now the forecast has changed, and there's like snow tonight,
Mm.
storm Wednesday,
Yeah.
snowstorm
Yeah.
this weekend, and I'm like, try and get them out.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah. Try to
let's
get them.
try, get
Yeah.
some out, and
Yeah.
but that's it. It's never ending, and yeah, it's real easy to go down the rabbit hole, especially when you enjoy something, and
Yeah.
you obviously have a talent at this, and we're lucky that you share it with us. But yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It does. And it's funny because I'm the most, I would say, introverted person. And I'm just amazed at myself that I'm doing stuff and putting videos out and things like that. And it's like, I would have never, even 3 years ago, thought that that's what I would do.
Yeah, it's
So,
that's kind of why Instagram is awesome because
yeah.
you're an introverted guy. Brian Fullerton is actually a very introverted guy. I am actually a very very introverted person. The
Yeah.
least introverted I've ever been is actually like music, Mike Bedell.
Okay.
But otherwise, like part of what I've liked about especially the way the business is set up is like my clients don't typically look over our shoulder, so I don't have to necessarily have like a ton
Yeah.
of that, like like you'd have with a manager, always reporting to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but like you catch us on like social media or doing these type of things, and you never know. And it's interesting because it brings out like it's a great outlet. It brings out an entirely
Yes.
different side of all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of like somehow they figured out to like tap into this like energy that's like there but wouldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
come out otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
Because
interesting.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, we'd all kind of just be as happy, or so we'd think, not having that interaction, or if it never came to be, we wouldn't know any different. But I think it's awesome that that seems to be kind of an ongoing thing, where like it's like landscape self help or something. It's like, hi, I'm Julio. I'm an introvert. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm an introvert too. Like, funny, we're now talking for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like nothing, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the funniest thing is I started originally, biggest reason was I could see my kids picking up those traits of
yeah,
being super shy, and there was a lot of opportunities that I lost out on because of it,
totally.
and I didn't want that to happen to them. And that's why I just started, I just started, that was one of the push that was like, I'm going to do this and show them that if you go outside of your comfort zone and you push through, then opportunities will start, to happen. And it has happened. And now my daughter, she'll say funny things, like I'll be talking to a group of people and she'll come by and go, look at you, Mr. Social, right? And things, right? So
That's
it's funny that they're kind of seeing that and picking up on that. So that's cool.
That's
um
awesome. You're such a good dad to value that and want to instill that in your kids, because that's something that you asked earlier. What are some things you tell someone
yeah.
with a good heart? And that would be one, is like swallow your anxiety or pride or whatever it is for that individual, and like go put yourself in some uncomfortable situations.
Hmm.
This book that Brian keeps telling me to read, Go for No, and he gave me like the summary of it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's essentially part of it, is like put yourself in uncomfortable
Yeah.
situations,
Yeah.
go for no, and that's something looking back, especially like maybe more of like my music days,
Yeah.
where and I think you had mentioned this in a podcast, like you had an opportunity, but you never really followed up on it. And
Yeah.
there was definitely some things that I'm guilty of in the same sense. And when I heard that, I was like, word, yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's deep. And then what you were saying, I remember listening to the one where you were sharing the story about seeing that shyness in your kids and wanting to help them get through that. And how did you do it? By being a really good example. And that's huge, because I hope it's a lot more than your kids. You're actually being a really good example for like an entire community of
Yeah.
people. And
Awesome.
it's the power of like putting yourself out there and um, seeing where it'll take yourself. I'm sure, kind of, especially this tends to be a music thing, like
Yeah.
perfectionist. Like, how much of a perfectionist are you?
Yeah. Pretty, when it comes to, I think that's my biggest challenge, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to my YouTube videos that I'm trying to, build the YouTube channel stuff. And it's very structured, very
Yes.
like this, right? And I don't know how to not do that. Right? It's
Yes.
like, because that's what, how I've been taught. When you go through music production, when you go through all the things,
Yes.
it's all like,
Audio engineers, it's very
yeah,
A, B, C, D, right through Z, and then
yeah,
that's 100%. The reason I bring that up is like with that free landscaper. If that were like a Bedell Property Management thing, it probably still wouldn't be out, because
yeah,
it wouldn't be perfect, and I wouldn't have had the time. There's actually Brian, who I feel like his what you people come into your life for different reasons, and one of the
yeah,
reasons he came into my life was to like break my perfectionism a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Because like I am to a fault, like, and the music me is like the worst of it. Like gosh, I could go on and on with crazy examples of like arguments that were had about like this note versus that
yeah,
note, or
yeah,
that sound, or this frequency, or this drum replacement versus that, on and on and on. And that is like a benefit to Bedell Property Management when you're doing very high end work. That attention to detail, like money almost can't buy. That's great. I've had a conversation a couple times with my clients in the past 6 months where I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm too picky. And they're like, no, don't change. Like, part of the reason we have you is because you're like, you care way more than us. And it's like,
yeah, yeah,
great. But it was Brian who helped me realize, like, hey, if you wait till that free landscaper is perfect, you're never going to put it out, and you help zero people.
yeah, yeah,
And maybe just like put it out there. You can always change things later. You can always find the things that don't
yeah,
work. No one's going to blame you. No one's going to be like, well, why would you put it out? It wasn't
yeah,
perfect. Like, all you're doing is giving back. All you're doing is helping people. Just
yeah, yeah.
why don't you just go help some people?
Yeah.
And
You can
uh,
tweak it along the way. And
totally. And so
yeah,
that's it. Actually, like it went from being an idea to like something like really fast. And that was part of Brian kind of like, I think you just need to put it out there. Like,
yeah,
we kind of like talked about it. It was
yeah,
funny. The initial iterations of it go back to like spring of last year, and it didn't even come out till the fall. And it was partially because Brian's like, how much longer are you going to just talk about this
yeah,
versus
yeah,
hey, it's going to rain on Thursday. Why don't you just suck it up? And
yeah, yeah,
we
and
know you know how to design a website. So why don't you just
yeah,
go
yeah,
do that?
dude, yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's where it's at. And so that's why I knew, you being an audio engineer, the music guy, like a majority of us, if you follow that route, you end up being like very perfectionist minded. And while that's great for those, there's kind of like no other way. You just get sloppiness otherwise.
yeah,
There's other facets where you just got to kind of put it out there.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there's a beauty to that, because all you're doing is helping people. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it's amazing. It's funny, it turned into a Brian Love fest, but he told me once, I texted him, and he gave me a great piece of advice. And it's always, I always think it's awesome. Like, he's always willing to help.
always.
But I texted him and I said, I just, I think it was right after I bought, just after Christmas or before Christmas, and I bought a DSLR camera to do
Nice.
the videos on. Just I'd been doing it for the first couple of years on the phone, and I
Yeah.
thought,
Okay.
let me just put the few pennies I've saved away from the YouTube videos,
Sure.
and let me reward myself and get a camera, right? And I said, how do you just texted, how did you ever get over filming yourself in public with that big camera and stuff, right? And he just said, I realized when I realized that, or like, how did you get over not worrying about what people think? And he said, when I realized that those people aren't paying the bills. And that
That is so
just put it,
true.
it put it in perspective for me, right? So this a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to get out of the house. I learned. I called the dealer to ask them about something, and I mentioned, or they mentioned, that they got in one of those Exmark Stars mowers, and
Yeah, okay.
stand-on mowers are not popular here. So the fact that they had one, and they had the smaller one that's new
Mhm.
for this year, I was like this is, I got to get all over this with my camera, right, and film this thing. So I went, and it was outside in the parking lot and on a busy street, and a bus stop every 5 minutes, like a bus stopping and people getting out. And I had my camera out with the big fuzzy mic, and came home so excited. And I told my kids, I was like, oh, Casey Neistat out there. Like I didn't care at all who was looking at me or watching me. It didn't matter. All that mattered was getting the information out to the people that I was trying to serve, and
Yeah.
giving them my perspective on this new mower and what I thought about it, right? And it was all just thinking in the back of my head about Brian saying that, like, you can't worry about that. You just go on and pick your target. These people are not even gonna, they're not, they don't even know you, they don't even think about you. They look at you and go, whatever,
Totally. That's ironic because I actually met Brian from him toting around his camera. It was
Oh, okay.
at a dealer, oddly
Yeah.
enough. They have like middle of March a luncheon. And the whole idea is to come and have contractors come in and like pre-order some parts for the year, or oil filter, oils, blades, whatever. And hey, maybe even buy like a new lawnmower or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
There's all sorts of specials and manufacturer representatives, and they feed us some steak and cake or whatever. And so, I know the family that runs this dealer.
yeah.
I've developed quite a relationship with them, and they're at the point where they've got like they sponsor some of the major sports teams here in Detroit. They've got commercials on television.
Oh,
So
cool.
I see Brian with his camera, and actually, like, I'm looking at equipment, and I turn around, and there he is, and I like am almost kind of in a shot. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And my first thought is like, this is somebody the Weingart's finally hired to like take
Yeah, yeah,
photos of this event. What are
yeah,
the
yeah.
other? And fast forward like 20 minutes, I'm like eating some food, and Brian walks by again, and I go, hey, what are you doing? I'm expecting his response to be like, oh, I work for the Weingart's family. I'm just here shooting. And he's like, well, I have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, why? And he actually was nice enough to entertain the conversation for like 20 minutes, and it actually spurred our entire friendship. But it's so he coined it perfectly to you. At that time, when we weren't friends and didn't know each other, he did not care that I
Mm.
was like basically judging
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like, and
yeah.
at the time, I think he had like less than 1,000
Hmm.
subscribers or whatever. And he told me that. I'm like, and how many people follow you? And he's like 500. And I'm like, good job, you know. And it's I think he's even mentioned like his wife thought maybe he hit 1,000, and that I was like, cool, you know, this guy might get some. And like at the time, I knew who like Keith Kalfas and Geek to Freak were,
Yeah,
and I'm kind of like, this guy, no way will eclipse any of those guys to be in that echelon. And man, he did a great job of proving me wrong in just a matter of months. But
yeah, no kidding. He's
yeah, it's our first interaction literally epitomized what he told you, where he's like, Mike doesn't pay my bills. I don't care. This goofball who's here spending money at this dealer can ask me whatever question he wants.
yeah,
I don't care. He like, it was like laser focus. Like he knew what he was doing. He knew what the end goal was. And me asking a silly question of him and kind of looking at him in a peculiar manner
didn't dawn at him on him.
yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't shy him at all. You know, I highly doubt he went home and told his wife like, yeah, I met this guy named Mike, and he made me kind of feel awkward for doing it. Probably didn't even bring me up. I was probably just some goofball. But
Yeah,
then later on we become friends, and that's just how the world works.
yeah, it's crazy. Eh? It's but he's been a great help throughout the months.
Yeah.
Being able to just shoot a text too, and he's always there, willing to help. And
That's one of the best parts about Brian is he will respond to like anyone and everyone.
yeah,
Sometimes it takes a little longer, I think, than he wants to get back to some people, but yeah, he'll help like anybody with anything. See, maybe I'm even gonna help see how far I can push that and have him help me move some stuff around the house here in the next if I can get him to say yes to that. But
let's see what happens. Awesome. So that's all the questions that I had for you. Um, uh, Actually, one more question, and that is basically, how can people find you online, either on Bedell Property Management, or how can they check out your contracts and stuff that you have for sale, as well as that free budget tool? Where
yeah.
can they find that?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can find me at Bedell Management or at Debt Free Landscaper. We've got Facebook pages for each of those, but there's always BedellPropertyManagement.com, or like you mentioned, there's all sorts of resources available for landscape and lawn care contractors over at DebtFreeLandscaper.com.
Awesome. And I'll put those in the podcast show notes as well for people to link to, as well as in the video description if you're watching the video version here on YouTube. So thank you
Awesome.
very much for coming on to the podcast, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. This was a great time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.